Good morning and welcome to the Conversation Cauldron, brought to you by the Sacred Rites School of Magic. This is where we're going to be talking with people from all over. And today on the panel with me, I have David, who is a fellow professor at the Sacred Rites School of Magic. And we are going to be talking with Aura Mighton. She is poet, author, seer, satyr practitioner, and pagan. Welcome, Aura.
Thank you.
And I'm proud to say she's my friend. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. Okay, I want to start out with, for those who may not know, what is a satyr practitioner?
Yes. Satyr is a form of Norse seership, and it was referred to in the sagas. And I would say for the lay person, you could probably equate it to a form of mediumship or trance work. And it sort of focuses in the Scandinavian realm, where we use a lot of singing and trance to travel through Yggdrasil to speak with the gods, speak with our ancestors and the spirits, largely to get messages for others, sometimes for ourselves when needed. Men and women both practice it, and there are certain elements that make it unique based on where you sit, how you breathe, the music you leverage, but from sort of basic understanding, satyr is really about seership.
Perfect. And Aura, was there a defining moment when you decided to label your practice? And if so, when was that?
Yes. So I guess you could say for the majority of my life, as many sort of witches would say, they've had random events pop up, and it sort of reappeared, I would say, when everything shut down for COVID, because I was forced to turn inward, spent a lot of time alone, and all of the things that I had kept in a box off to the side while I lived my muggle life started to want to be let out again. And so I would say probably around January of 2021 is where all of the puzzle pieces were starting to crystallize into this ball of understanding that then kind of started to make me realize that pieces were being put in my way so that I could follow the thread to where I belonged. And Freya really was the patron goddess that ripped the blindfold off, let's say, to just have a real chat, because she is a very visceral goddess. And so she was a little like, I'm going to need you to wake up to who you are and stop screwing around. So in that moment, it was sort of all of these satyr practitioners were coming out, and I was just drinking from the fire hydrant of the universe from this radiant golden goddess who was bringing this war cry to me that really made me realize, oh, there's a reason why I'm this firehouse of a human. There's a reason why I have this cauldron of rage in my body that comes out when there's an injustice and when I feel that women need to take the charge. And why are all of these things going, along with this real sense of, like, I'll be very blunt. You know, there's a very sexually powerful realm within the Norse gods, and for women that are embracing their power around the divine feminine, and Freya really is a patroness for that. So it kind of started to put all these pieces together of, this is my nature, and you cannot hide your nature for very long. And as many people experience in midlife, you just have this enough. So all of those pieces came together. She put me on the thread, and that was when I realized, all right, this is my realm. But what I would say is interesting is if you engage in this world, you have a thirst for knowledge, and that knowledge becomes almost universal. And if you embrace a universal perspective, suddenly the label almost becomes irrelevant. It's moot. So I think while that was my starting point in 2021 and where I really, I guess, came into myself, as I have expanded that, I am less inclined towards labels, which is why, as Mara said, I tend to just refer to myself as a seer these days. And I follow the thread of my intuition wherever that may lead and whatever tool I may need to pick up in order to facilitate that. And I just embrace that it is this connection with all of those things rather than being one narrow leg.
And that thread has led some magical places.
Yes, indeed.
I want to talk about your poetry for a minute. So your book, A Year's Lanterns, would you read us your favorite poem out of the book?
Yes. Thank you. This is a piece that I wrote in October. So as I mentioned, my sort of real acceptance of the circumstances, as we may call them, was in January. So by October, I'd done a lot of reflecting. And many of the magical threads that you've referred to, Mar, had started to surface. So I had started writing the big book, as I call it when I'm talking to you. And so then this piece kind of started to come out in that fall realm. My heart has been broken more times than I thought I'd survive, in tearing chainsaw gashes and with subtle paper cut slices. Each time I chose to see the lesson rather than be consumed. I may be weary, but now I am wise, and even the oldest tree is loved by the right woodsman.
I love that.
Wow.
And I was going to ask you what about that poem spoke to your soul, but you already told us before you read it. So,
well, I think the only thing I would add to that is, sorry to interrupt you, Mar. I think there's a piece in this that might resonate with others, which is life is full of heartbreak in many forms and in many ways. And as many of us know, your awakening, your phase, journey to enlightenment is going to be full of climbing through the mud and all kinds of big and small heartbreaks you're going to experience, not just the ones that you might have with a lover. And those happen in big ways and small ways. But for, as you and I, Mar, trees are our kin. They bring us home to where we want to be. You too, David. I love it. Right? So that feeling of like, I am just an old tree now, and I'm okay with that because the right woodsman, the right man, the right woman is going to love all the gnarls on your body and all the scars on your heart, and they're going to embrace all of those things. And that was really a place that I was living in that fall of just, I like who I am. I don't care if I have gray and my crone years are banging on the door. It's who I am, and the right people will love who that is.
Hey, the crone years are some excellent years.
I love that. But I agree. I think we get to an age, right, where we start paying attention, or we stop paying attention and stop giving importance to those little things, and we embrace our age and the wisdom that comes along with it, the things that we've witnessed, in this long journey that we call life. And we're excited to see what else is in the horizon for us. But I love that. I love that you just accepted it and you were like, you know what, this is how I felt at the moment, and this is what's inspiring me, and I'm going to write about it. So that's very, very passionate.
Thank you.
And Aura, can you give us a little recap about your new book, A Bond of Blood and Bone?
Yes. So this is one of the magical threads that Mar mentioned. That sort of July of 2021, I was very much focusing on meditation, traveling the tree, welcoming the visitors that would come into my house, whether they were, human spirits, deities, the whole gong show would appear at varying points of time. And so for me, seership, and many people that engage in seership, it's not like, there's a presence that's standing in your room and suddenly Santa Claus is there and we're having a chat. It's like this flashing that happens, this movie in your mind's eye that occurs. And I just started viscerally sobbing. And so much for me around seership is the emotion that comes with it first, and then the message will come after. But what I realized I was seeing was this story unfolding of a love, this great epic love that obviously comes with a great deal of pain, because I feel no great love is without great pain, or great lessons, if you want to put a different bent on it. And so I started to see this story unfold, and I began to realize that the story was about Cernunnos and sort of one of his early lives that he lived. And depending on, what realm of deity work you exist in, I am very much of the opinion that the gods work the earth. They travel from this side across many planes and onto the other side, and they can, at points at time, choose to engage in a form of incarnation on the earth to experience the things in some small way, because they don't fully incarnate necessarily. But this was a story that I was showing of a time when he had chosen to incarnate, fallen in love with someone, built a life, and then moved through that phase of bringing this woman over to the other side and engaging in what Mara and I kind of have, uncovered, is this whole other world on the other side that ties to the purpose that some of us might have. And so this book really became for me a telling of a giant tale that wasn't just on the surface this love story that I had witnessed and caused such a visceral reaction to me. It was this telling, almost as some people say, of a fact within fiction kind of realm of, these are some of the threads of Cernunnos' life that I have been given to share with a broad range of individuals who might be interested in learning more about him. Here are some stories around the origin of humanity and how we were really connected to the earth at one point, far more than what we are now, and far more widespread, I would say. Like, it wasn't just reserved for witches, it was reserved for everyone. It was a gift that we were granted. And then also to share the story of what that looks like on the other side. How do we transition from life into death? And what does it mean to engage in that process of death? And what happens to us on the other side afterward? What are our choices around that? And maybe the message that our source goddess has to share with us around what her hopes were and why we experience some of the things that we experience.
So true.
You consider this a true story?
To me, it feels true and real and all of the things. And I think every author has to live the story they're trying to write for it to feel real to the people that are reading it. I think there will be a lot of people out there who will just say, this is far too fantastical for it to have ever been true, regardless of whether we're talking about Paleolithic human beings at the end of the Ice Age. It doesn't really matter, I guess, because it feels real, it invokes emotions that are real, and that's enough for me.
And would you say that that's the reason why you decided to tell these stories and decided to put it down on paper?
Yes, I think there were many reasons for why I wrote that book, and it was wrapped in a very large blanket of fear in the beginning, because anyone who's starting to really engage and awaken to this space feels concerned about fully going public, fully sharing all of the things. What are the possible ramifications of me sharing all of the things? And so I have been talking with this time around why am I seeing these things? Why am I feeling these emotions? What am I supposed to do with this? What is the purpose? Am I just having a nervous breakdown? Maybe I'm having a nervous breakdown, everyone. I mean, we've all had that moment, right? So Marty looked at me and she kind of made a comment about, this is fear talking. This is not anything relevant to why you should or should not write the book. No one's going to judge you. No one's going to care. No one's telling you you can't, so just do it. And it's funny because there are pieces in my poetry book as I went through this journey of my own. So the poetry book is very much about my personal journey. And, you know, there are references to the owl, which is always Mar. So yeah, I basically realized at one point in time, it doesn't matter if I've never written a book before. It doesn't matter if I question my skills in this realm. The story has been given to me for a reason, and it's going to resonate maybe with a select few, but it's going to mean something important to that select few if it crosses their path, and that was the point of sharing it. And then I think there are just the other threads of, I will be very open about the fact that Cernunnos wants to be heard now, more so than I think ever before. And he's willing to share his story with a great number of people. And I certainly am not selfish in thinking that I am the only person that has a connection with him, that he shares his vision and his wisdom with. He's reaching out to a lot of people. And I feel like this story and my adding to the voices that are speaking to him now are going to help many others find that path that represents strong connection to the earth and nature and the wilds within us, and the balance of the divine feminine and divine masculine that needs to live within each of us for us all to be connected again.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think not just him, but I think all the gods and goddesses are returning and speaking to people and trying to get us to wake up and live a different kind of life than we have been living for the last however many years. And they're reaching us on a personal level instead of just being these beings in the sky that you can't communicate with. They're coming closer and closer. And I'll tell you one thing too, if you're crazy, so am I. And I'll be right next to you in the asylum.
I think that's why we get along so well, right? That's a common denominator, right?
Yes. That's a prerequisite to getting into.
Right.
Put us all in the padded room.
Right, right.
Fine.
And just to talk a little bit about what Aura was mentioning about that fear, right? I think that's normal. We always have that fear of what is the response going to be? How are people going to interpret this? Are they going to like it? Is it going to touch people's lives as much as it's touching yours to put this down on paper? Or can you tell us a little bit about the reception? Were there any reservations?
Yeah, I think, this is not a bestseller book that is going to be, Stephen King realm of novel telling. I think the people that have chosen to read it have really resonated with it because it has spoken to a thread in their life that was already perhaps tugging at them and they didn't know why or what it was. I have not experienced any reservations from anyone that has read it. I think there is, when I wrote the book, there was a bit of a struggle for me personally because it's written in two parts and they feel very different from each other, because one which is very much grounded in the earth and that realm, and then the other part 2 book is very much grounded in the other side and much more fantasy oriented, let's say, as opposed to the first part of the book is more magical realism. And so I think the one thing that I have heard from some people is that depending on their reading style and their interests, they resonate with one half versus the other half of the book, and they almost want to jump to part 2 versus part 1. And I think that's really great that people
I agree.
are taking it and putting it in their own lens, because I certainly didn't. I had no idea what to do with it, being a new author at that point in time. So I thought, this is what makes sense. These are the instructions I have from the universe. But I think when readers take the book and do what they feel is right with it, that is gratifying to me.
Okay.
I love
Who
that.
said it's not going to be a bestseller? I'm telling you what.
Or a movie. Or a movie.
When people start reading it, I believe that word of mouth, it is such an incredible story. I mean, it is just, it's riveting from page 1 and sucks you in, and you love the characters, and it's just brilliant as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. I am an avid reader, and it is just such a wonderful book. And I really believe that as it gets known, you're going to be surprised.
Thank you, Mark.
Catch on like wildfire.
I would love that. Not selfishly. I feel like I would really love for people to read it to just know who he is.
No, and to be honest with you, Aura, your passion alone wants me to read the book. It's just
amazing.
one of those things that you're so passionate about it, and the way that you're even describing the differences between book 1 and book 2, it just makes me want to explore it on my own and read both parts and be able to see, well, do I resonate more with one than the other? So believe it or not, that passion that you have for your stories, it's coming through on camera, and I'm sure that many of our viewers are also going to feel compelled to check it out and to, you know, to a deep dive into this book and read both parts as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is part 2 written?
Well, so book 1 has part 1 and part 2. Book 2's coming. I needed a wee bit of a break, I would say, after the first one. That was a 2-year endeavor, a little bit of, put a helmet and goggles on every day, because what am I going to be shown in the realm of the plains? Which is maybe a segue to From the Throne of the Hidden One, which was the second sort of short story that I wrote while I was on a bit of a reprieve between writing book 1 and then the big book 2 follow-up.
Yeah, I was going to say, so your idea of a break was writing another book.
Sometimes you can't control when the muse arrives in the room, and you just have to just take it.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up From the Throne of the Hidden One. Can you give us a little recap of that book?
Yeah. So it actually ties to one of the questions you asked me earlier. And when Freya arrived on the scene for me, it was not long after that Hel appeared. Many people in the Sailor space have come to me, especially after reading this particular story, From the Throne of the Hidden One, and noted that Freya and Hel seem to be paired for many in this space. And when you read the story, you'll start to understand why. But for me, when you also read A Bond of Blood and Bone, Hel is introduced in that story, just in the way that she arrives on the other side and she explains her relationship to death and the role that she plays. And so in the course of me writing the first book, she was very prominent. She's a pillar of my practice. She is a goddess that I go to regularly for advice and support and access to my ancestors when I need their advice and support. And so in the course of writing the big book, she very much was, I will help you do this, but a gift in return for a gift is often what's talked about in the Havamal, which is one of the bigger sagas that's discussed. And so in that, I agreed that I would write her story, or the pieces that she chose to share with me of her story. And so at this point in time, From the Throne of the Hidden One is a short story, but it gave me the facets of Hel that I had not yet seen over the course of my journey in working with her. She very much came to me as being the void, which is what most people seem to resonate with Hel. She is this pool of chaos that people refer to, but she also has other elements of her, and many goddesses have that triple faceted element, and she functions as the void, the keeper, and then the mother. And so it wasn't until I had been writing the story and she'd been showing me bits and pieces, and it went really quiet for a long time. And I didn't know where she'd gone and why she wasn't sharing pieces of her story. And then, you know, as our muggle brain kicks in, you think, am I in trouble? Have I done something wrong? Why am I forsaken?
Right. Well, you know, and for me, it seems like she had a story to tell and she wanted to tell you that story. And maybe it was under the indication that she wanted you to share that story with the world.
Definitely.
Can you explain to us why you decided to put it down on paper again, and what was the reception once it was out?
Yes. And I had to, you know, as you're saying, is in the course of writing that story, there were moments in my life that had to happen on a particular timeline before she would reveal those elements of herself. And it wasn't until after that big moment at the end of that story that I was like, oh, there was no delay. I was not forsaken. She was not quiet. There was a timeline that needed to unfold. And so that story had to be shared. It was not an option. It was almost though I was taking dictation. I didn't even send it through editorial services in the publishing company. It was very much, you will share the story. You will share it as I have given it to you, and you will not change anything. And so I gave it away for free through the company, Hagelaz Publishing, because it was so clear to me that she wanted her story shared, because she is also a very rarely spoken of goddess in the Norse sagas. Very little is known about her, and obviously there is the association with Christian hell and that concept of punishment, and her name is affiliated with that based on purely the spelling. And so I think she is another one of the goddesses that Mar was referring to earlier that are returning, they're waking, they want their stories shared, they want to bring people into what is forgotten knowledge. They want us to wake to the things that are woven within us that we have repressed over time. And so this story was definitely one of those just, all right, seatbelt on, I am doing it, and we're going to share this with whoever feels like they want to read it. And it's interesting when you ask about reception. I had, when I released it, the only thing I asked for in return was feedback and comments on they did it, because I also love negative feedback. I feel like as an author, you have to be willing to hear both things. And I had a woman in Spain reach out to me and just say that she cried the whole time she read the book, because it was the first time she had read on paper someone that was able to capture the voice of hell that she heard in her work with her, and what she had seen, because she had seen other pieces of the relationship between Freya and Hel that I had not seen in my story. And so she was blown away that someone saw this same kindred relationship between the two of them, but she had seen it in a much earlier time. And so it was fascinating to me. And I thought, I don't even care. This one connection that I have made with this one woman in Spain who reached out to me and shared with me what this book pulled out of her was so heartwarming to me that if she's the only one that reads it, I'm happy.
Oh, that's amazing. And I feel like any artist, right, when they release work, whether it be artwork, a book, music, it's under the indication that if it changes one life, if it touches one person, then the whole process was worth it. So
Exactly.
that's amazing feedback. That is amazing feedback. And I hope that it serves as inspiration for you to continue to write and put stories down on paper, because it does change lives. So kudos to you.
And so many of the dark goddesses have gotten such a bad rap. I mean, all anybody ever focuses on or talks about is the dark side of them, the anger and the warrior, but they all have so many sides to them. You know, I personally work with Hecate, and she is such a mother figure when given the opportunity to be. that it surprises me when you say her name and people say, oh, watch out for her because, she hurt my friend when my friend was working with her. What? It's like, no, I don't think that's what happened. But they get such a bad reputation. So I love that you're telling the other side of these stories. It's just, it's beautiful. And people
Oh,
need to
thank
hear
you.
that.
Yeah, it's
People need.
interesting what you're saying. I would say as humans, we tend to fear the dark. And we tend to fear things that are intense, like powerful. And I think no one would argue that when you work with goddesses that are associated with war and death and transformation, which is what underpins all of it, we get a little intimidated. We get a little uncomfortable because they're asking us to see the things we don't want to see. They're asking us to open the boxes that live inside us that we maybe tucked away a long time ago, boxes we don't want to open, maybe that we even forgot are there. And they're like, no, yard sale, pull it all out. I want to see it, and then we're going to call it. And so it's, that makes people uncomfortable, of course. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. That means you just like, okay, take a deep breath and we'll do a little bit a day. Nobody reorganizes the house in an hour. So it's so true, Barb.
Yeah, and somewhere along the line, dark and got associated with evil or wrong and we don't know dark without light. We don't know light without dark. We have to have that balance. And people do themselves such a disservice. They miss half of the year, half of the day, half of their lives if they're only focused on the light.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also want to go back to something else you said about the fallow time, because I know you struggled seriously when you felt that hell had pulled back. And I've had those times when no matter what you do, you just can't connect with your god or goddess. And they feel so personal and so painful.
Yep.
How did you get through that?
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
It's happened enough times. I think I understand the pattern now, which is when you engage in this process of awakening yourself and accepting yourself, there is only so much drinking from the fire hydrant you can do before you're overwhelmed. And whether we like it or not, some of us are very, type A, I want it now, I need immediate gratification. So when they're present and they're giving you the information for the lesson, it's invigorating. It's all of the dopamine hit that you need. But then when they step back, because it's time for you to internalize and it's time for you to experience, and the only way that you truly live a lesson and make it almost an autonomic function that you need it to become to go to the next phase, you have to have some quiet to do that, to let it really sink in. And so those windows can be short. So they can be days, weeks, maybe months. And in my case, it was many, many months through the winter time. And I think the only way I got through it in that realm was to understand that I had been there before. There was a valley before, and I will get through it. And it's going to mean, though, almost this balance I find of, because my life lesson is patience. I am acutely aware that this is the thread of the lesson of this lifetime for me. So I am aware that I need to just sit sometime. I can't control it. I have to wait, and I just have to be in the moment. But then there became a flip point in time where I realized this has gone too far. I think I have sat in the present far too much. So there's an element then I had to create a mantra for myself a bit, which was always through this course of transformation that I've been going through, I would say almost in the last 10 years of my life, and has been, I am going to live a life of passion and magic. Anything less is unacceptable. And so when you get into the valley at points in time, if you haven't truly articulated that mantra for yourself, you can get lost and you can stay there. And so I had to remember again, and it was through sort of meditation and really just engaging with nature and being outside, that I realized, no, you've forgotten your mantra. You've forgotten the mantra that if you want a life of magic, you have to choose a life of magic every day, every day. And it's work. Let's be real, it's work. But you cannot live a life of passion and magic by just laissez-faire existing. You have to choose it, you have to grab it, and you have to make it so every day. And that was what got me out of the valley.
Yeah, no, I
Great
agree.
advice.
Yeah, it definitely is a commitment, right? In order to be able to achieve the full effect of communing with the deity and living this magical life, it is a commitment. You know, we need to incorporate magic in our everyday life, in, you know, our routines and our processes. And that's the only way that we can truly, truly, you know, get all the benefits of this magical lifestyle that everyone talks about so highly, right?
Yeah.
And or I have another question. What is it about your books that you wish your readers would grasp? Is there a message or a lesson that you wish would resonate with them?
I think there are many, and each book has been different. So my poetry book I put out into the universe because I wanted people to understand they weren't alone. And if you are in the phase of your life where you feel you are being called to wake up to something more than just the muggle existence, let's say, this was a call to say, there are others of us here. There are others of us trudging through the mud every day, feeling like we're crazy, and you're not. And at the end of this book, there really is a call to more women because of what was going on at that time in the larger landscape, but it applies to men as well, just to bring your sorrows to the foot of the mountain, because we are all here. Some of us are ahead on the path, some of us are behind on the path, but no one will be left behind. And so that was what the purpose of the poetry book was. A Bond of Blood and Bone, as I said, was really, you know, I wanted people to understand that we are magical as humans. And we existed in this very magical space at the beginning of our time. And we, maybe not individually, but collectively, decided to turn that off in some fashion over time. And maybe it's time to turn it back on. And so that is what I'm really hoping, is that when you read this book, you wake up to the possibility that, are we supposed to be something more? I think I'd like to know what that something more is. And that is what I would like to in that story perspective, which is, you know, from the Stone of the Hidden One. That book really was done to call to people who are working with her, call to people who wanted to know her more and understand what it meant to work with a death goddess and have her be there in your life, because this is a personal story. What I've written in that book is what I saw and what happened to me. You know, I'm the one pinned in the mammogram biopsy machine. Like, that's me. That was my life. So, yeah, that was a personal sharing. And then when I write book 2, From a Bond of Blood and Bone, that one is probably going to be more of an expansion of, you know, the message that people need to understand about what it really does look like to wake in this time and to have your house full of gods, and what does that feel like? How do you embrace that without just running out the door and going like, what's happening? Why are these people in my house?
I'm glad you brought it back to there, because I wanted to tell you, when I was going through my my crazy phase, my Reiki attunement and my past life regression, you were such a lifeline for me and helped me understand what I was seeing, what was happening to me, and reassured me that no, I in fact am not crazy, that these things are happening. And I want to thank you for that, for being there for me, for being seer for me. But, you know, I love you so much.
I love you. It's interesting though, what you're saying, because that really is how I view seership. We people that have this particular skill, because I do believe everyone can touch magic, but everyone has their own manifestation of that. Let's say we all come with something that is really easy for us and that other people seem to struggle with. And so for me, seership really is just being a conduit between what is seen and unseen and helping people interpret the message. And it does take a bit of an art to park your own bias and lens and fully allow yourself to just be a conduit for what's there. And so I see it really as a gift. I think you can feel like you're crazy, but for me, it's a gift. And this is really all the way back to the very beginning of one of the core premises of Sailors, which they were fundamental women that were part of the community that would have questions brought to them to say, when do we plant our seeds? When do we harvest? What is this winter going to look like? I'm not feeling well. Why is that happening? Or, I have this rash of bad luck. What's going on? And how do I make offerings to the gods to, assuage some of the difficulties that I'm having? And so we were seen as these women that were elders and sources of wisdom, which is, where that term wise woman may have come from, in the community that offered this for free. So, somebody else would plant crops and feed the community, and we would be the ones that would help share messages and find out information that may not have been accessible to the broader community at that point in time. And so for me to be able to do that now, and it goes a little bit to your question, David, around where did the label of Sailor come from? And that is, to me, what it is. It's this embracing of the fact that you have a gift. You have been given this gift to share with the community so that you can add to the health and connection of the overall community so that you can survive. At that point in time, it would have been about survival. And now I think there's an element of emotional and spiritual survival that this is pinned to. And it's really why I don't necessarily offer my work or my services in seership for a fee, because I just believe it's a gift. It's meant to be given to the community, and this is how we will all grow.
Beautiful.
I agree. And how beautiful will it be, right, within our magical community when you need someone else's ability, that they are offering it just as effortlessly and free of charge that you're doing, which is a beautiful thing. I know a lot of people who are gifted in their abilities, but see it as a money-making scheme. They are not willing to help. They're willing to offer a service for a fee. So just hearing you speak so openly about your abilities and helping others is very inspiring. It's very, very inspiring, and it makes me want to do the same and help others and within and out of the magic community. So kudos to you for that.
Thank
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said for returning to kind of a barter system where we are offering our services, not necessarily for money, but for some other service that we need.
Yes.
I think it'd be a beautiful society if we could go back there a little bit.
Yes. It's funny you
But
mentioned
what? It's true. Yeah, and I agree. I think that, when we see things less transactional and more about helping each other, helping the human race, the world, a community, it's not only rewarding for the person who's receiving those benefits, but also for yourself, saying that, you did something so unselfish as helping somebody in a time of need and expecting nothing from it, just, blessing from the universe later on. So I agree with that. And we should all be helping each other out a little bit more, or at least, sometimes we're scared to ask for help. But if someone, reaches out like an extension, or they're reaching out, or an olive branch, it allows the communication to flow better. And you might be a little less hesitant to say, I need help, or there's something that you can do for me. Are you willing to help me?
Yeah. That's exactly what sort of my vision of the 4 pillars of engaging in this practice would be. And one of those tenets is to help. Ask for help when you need it and give the help when you can.
I agree. I agree with
Well,
that.
I love that. And while I would love to talk to you forever, and I had more questions that I would like to ask, we are out of time.
Oh no.
So thank you so much for being here. It was lovely to see you again. I hope we can meet in person again soon. I missed your face.
Thank
And
you so
Aura,
much for having me.
Aura, before we let you go, where can our viewers, our students find your books?
HighGlassPublishing.com has all of the books available, and if you have any issues, certainly feel free to reach out. We have a contact us form on the site that you can get a hold of me at if you need to. So I would love to see everyone, even if it's just to drop me a line and say, what were you talking about with the thing about the thing?
Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
Yes, thank you so much. We
Everyone. Thank you for
appreciate
having
I
it.
love
me.
you.
And we wish you a very blessed day. And to our students and viewers, thank you so much for spending this time with us, with Mar, myself, and Aura. And we'll see you on the flip side.
That's the Conversation Cauldron, where we're stirring up magic.
Yep, mixing it all up. Bye, everyone.
Bye.